Thank you very much, Dr. Edith Basalirwa. A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to see you this morning, joining us and starting your day with us. We are very excited about today's topic, using your values and soft skills to build a resilient business. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll agree with me that there is a lot of change happening around us. The business environment is dynamic, it's complex, and building a successful business is not now just about strategy. It's not just about innovation. It's not just about access to finance, as most people think. But it is very important that as you build your business, as you adapt to the change, as you pursue your growth goals, you think about what is it that really drives you, and this is about your core values. What are those principles that guide the decisions that you take, the things that you do? What are those soft skills? We're going to learn more about soft skills from our speaker, but very quickly, really, how do you communicate? How do you collaborate? How do you lead people in your business? How do you relate with your customers? How do you relate with your stakeholders? That is going to take your business ahead. This is something that we usually never talk about, and yet we see people that stand out in business, and we never interrogate why they do that. And that's why I'm really excited that we have Mr. Richard Tugume Tulyahikayo coming to share with us how we can use our values and soft skills to build a resilient business, a business that stands the test of time. And I'm happy to mention that Mr. Tugume and I have worked together, serving on a projects committee at the Private Sector Foundation. We worked on a project that supported youth employment, and Mr. Tugume comes from the finance and accounting profession. He's an expert in impact investment and audit, risk management, and of course, like I said, financial management. He holds a master's degree in international business, an MBA majoring in international business from the University of Nairobi, and a bachelor's degree in commerce from Makerere University. He is the founder and team lead at Practitioners of Contemporary Philosophy Limited, which is a diverse impact investment consulting firm. And between 2018 and 2023, he was the country director of Yunus Social Business Foundation, which is a German-based impact investment fund. Some of you remember that we hosted Professor Muhammad Yunus at MUBS twice. Between 2008 and 2018, he was a loan portfolio manager based in Kampala, working with Root Capital Incorporated, a US-based impact investment fund. And then he was also a senior financial controller with the Association of Kilimanjaro Specialty Coffee Growers, based in Moshi, Tanzania, between 2005 and 2008. He has a long CV, but I'm happy to mention that he's also a member. He's a certified business consultant in seed training methodology and member of the jury for Seed, an organization headquartered in Munich, Germany. And he's also a founding board member at the Uganda Agribusiness Alliance. And he's also a vice chairman of the Uganda Commercial Farmers Association. He has experience as an entrepreneur because since 2007 to date, he's a commercial farmer of both livestock and crops. So he has cattle, goats, sheep, chicken. He grows matoke, plantain, cassava, mangoes, quite a lot he's doing. And he's also a founder and team lead at an impact investment consulting firm called, that one I already mentioned, Practitioners of Contemporary Philosophy. Mr. Tugume has an impressive CV, and that's why I thought we needed to get him to talk to us so we can learn from him. You're very welcome. Thank you so much for accepting to share with us on this very important topic. I would like to welcome you to make your presentation. You have 40 minutes, and thereafter we shall have a question and answer session. Over to you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Diana, for giving me the opportunity to come and present my thoughts and my experiences on this subject to the listeners, who I also like to thank for waking up early and giving the time to this presentation today. And I won't go into anything of the presentation about myself, other than confirming that indeed what has been said is what it is about me. And I would like to jump straight into my icebreaker, and my icebreaker is about what my personal view is about this kind of presentation. And this is about a story, or a legendary story out of India, around about the 14th century, that talks about the world being like an elephant, the elephant being the world's largest land mammal. And the folklore is about 6 blind men who went to see the elephant, and each of them touched different parts of the elephant, and they described the elephant according to the parts they touched, because they were not able to touch all the parts of that elephant. And so they all described the elephant in very, very different ways, even when the elephant was the same thing they were talking about. And so this legendary story was formed into a poem by a famous American poet called John Godfrey Saxe. And the poem was published in 1872. And I want to go through it very quickly to ground my discussion today. The first stanza of the poem goes, "It was the 6 men of Hindustan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, yet all of them were blind, so that by their imagination, they could satisfy their mind." And so the next 6 stanzas are about each of the 6 blind men describing the parts of the elephant they had touched, and that was what they are thinking of what the elephant was. And so the one who touched, the first that touched the tail, described the elephant as very like a rope. The one that touched the tusks of the elephant said it was very like a spear. The one that touched the main, stomach area of the elephant said it's very much like a wall. The one that touched the trunk said it's very like a snake. The one that touched the leg of the elephant said it's very like a tree. And the 6th and last one that touched the ear said it's very like a fan, F-A-N. And so the second last stanza goes, "And so these men of Hindustan disputed loud and long, each with an opinion exceeding stiff and strong. Each of them partially right, but all of them in the wrong." And the last stanza, which summarizes the moral of the poem, goes, "So oft in theologic wars, to the disputants I win, roll on in utter ignorance about what each other means, and prate about an elephant not one of them has seen." And so in that sense, I'm going to be speaking about the part of the elephant being matters earth and life, that I have touched in my background, my profession, my experience, my exposure, that may be different from each of the participants or attendants' parts of the elephant they may have touched. But the idea really for me in these kinds of presentations and sharings is for us at the end of the time we shall have spent together to have a more wholesome view of the same elephant that we are, that we are living and experiencing, so that we can, our view is a more wholesome view than than it was at the start of this presentation. And that as we share and discuss more and more in life, we get a bigger, better, clearer, and more accurate view of the same elephant that is life and the earth. And so jumping straight into the subject matter now, I would like to say that my personal involvement with matters, soft skills and values, as a background from my nearly 20 years now experience in impact investment, that began way back in 2006, while I worked in Tanzania as a CFO of the country's biggest coffee cooperative. And we were borrowers to an impact investment fund that I later came to work with for 10 years. That was Root Capital, based out of the US. And what happened was that, just to give a summary of what impact investment is about, it is about the philosophy around funding SMEs that are not only just profitable, but are also mindful about people and planet. People being the aspect of social impact, that they must positively impact the communities and stakeholders that they touch in the course of doing their business. And number two, that they are also environmentally responsible in their business practices, and that they are not that they are not in the business of pursuing profit at the expense of people and planet. And so this sector has evolved over the years, and I was privileged to really join the sector. At the time, it was very nascent in the region, the greater sub-Saharan Africa. And in my experience, I have seen 4 phases of the evolution of the industry. And the first phase of the evolution was the provision of financing to SMEs who were said to be stuck in what was called the missing middle. And missing middle are those SMEs whose financing need was too big for the microfinance industry to serve. And number two, they were at the same time not eligible for commercial bank financing because they didn't have, the requisite parameters that were being asked for by the commercial banks. Things like collateral security, things like audited financials, things like established markets, things like the requisite internal control systems and those kinds of things. So they kept on hanging in between and having no one to serve them. So that was the first level of intervention, where it was argued that let's provide funding for those kinds of businesses that did not have anyone to serve them by the traditional financial system that was present. And the next phase of the evolution, after running that for a few years, was that the argument was made, the financing is being made available, but it is not affordable yet. So the second level of intervention in the evolution was make the financing affordable, and affordability meant that make it cheaper than existing market rates. And for those of you who have been brave enough to borrow in the current financial, climate, rates are ranging anywhere between 18 and 24. And that was deemed too high for small and growing businesses that needed financing. The third level of intervention and evolution became what you'd call structuring the repayment of these loans, affordable loans now, according to the cash flow cycle of the businesses, or of the borrowers for that matter. And so the structure was such that you had to do a projected cash flow statement or analysis and ensure that loans were structured in such a way the business is able to pay when the cash is available in the cycle by the nature of its cash flow cycle, and that no repayment would be required when the cash flow was not available. And then the fourth and last level of evolution, where the sector is today, is that in addition to all those 3 things, there is now a provision of what I would call traditional technical assistance, which is helping the management of the borrower in traditional skills like financial management and also strengthening their internal control systems. And so how the soft skills and values thing was discovered by myself, and the argument made that it should be a part of a central part of business and entrepreneurship, is that after 12 years of my now nearly 20 years of experience, I did an analysis of my portfolio over the first 12 years. And I was interested in seeing what common threads existed between the clients or borrowers that performed exceedingly well and those that failed spectacularly, should I say. And just to clarify on what in my experience I deemed very successful and those that I deemed big failures, was that success in my experience meant that a borrower had taken on money or financing. They had been able to use the financing to grow their business with metrics like increased sales, increased gross and net margins, increased business volumes by quantity, increased presence by branches, increased employment numbers, and all those kinds of things that are a good indicator of business growth. On the failure side, failure spectacularly meant that one, the loans went into default, and number two, in the most severe cases, the entities actually went bankrupt and defunct and ceased to exist. And yet, the irony was that they had been, from the impact investment side of things, they had been given what was considered sufficient support in all the 4 levels of evolution I've talked about. And so the results of my analysis showed that the category of the ones that had failed, more than 9 out of 10 had not failed because of a deficiency in any of the 4 interventions that we had provided. None of them failed because the funding we had given them was inadequate. None of them failed because the funding was not reasonably priced or was not affordable for that matter. None of them failed because the repayment structure was not favorable according to the cash flow cycle of the business. And none of them failed because the traditional TA that had been given to them was not sufficient, but they still failed. So the question was, if the 4 things had been provided as should have been, then where were the failures coming from? And then interestingly, that is what unraveled the whole thing about the importance of soft skills and values. The failures, more than 9 out of 10 of the cases, were coming from a failure of soft skills and values, deficiency in the soft skills and values. I also want to add that if anyone Googled soft skills, there is a lot of literature, globally accepted literature around soft skills. Things like negotiation skills, communication skills, and all those kinds of things that are very, 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 very generic and traditional. But in my experience and analysis, the soft skills I'm talking about here are highly contextual, and they are not your usual, generic soft skills. They are highly contextual. They are things that are very insidious. They are very indigenous. And they're kind of things that have not yet made it to the mainstream of the entrepreneurship literature and body of knowledge out there. And I will be delving into some of the examples in my next segment. And then in the category of those that succeeded, what was also interesting was that the success had a contribution of the 4 levels of intervention I talked about, that the provision of the money, making it affordable, making the repayment structure favorable, and loading the traditional TA was a big contributor to the success. but interestingly, was not not the only or the most important reason why they succeeded. It was about the values and soft skills, now in the positive sense, of the individuals that were in charge or were entrusted with those 4 levels of intervention to translate them into business success. And so now delving into the kind of soft skills and values I'm talking about, that were a big cause of the success or the failure of those that I personally analyzed, is let me begin with one of the most prominent ones that came to the fore. Was one I called the responsible management of what is traditionally called the African tax. And the African tax was a term coined to mean the financial burden faced by anyone that is privileged to have relatively better financial success than most of their clansmen or their kinsmen in their extended family, in the sense where every manner of need, from a burial to a wedding to a need for school fees to a medical bill to anything financial, is channeled to the person that they believe has the means to meet that need. And so from your cousin to your sibling to your parent to your uncle to your grandfather to anyone that thinks you owe them a living in the African tax sense, moves every financial need from themselves to you to meet. And in dealing with that burden, when you are a young African or Ugandan entrepreneur running a business, and now you are privileged to have loan financing in the business, your ability to differentiate from the 2 things I call, 1 is access to funds, and 2, possession of funds, in how you deal with your African tax, is a major determinant as to whether your business will succeed or fail. And it begins with how you handle that loan financing and being able to avoid a loan default because you did not deploy the funds to what it was borrowed for, and you're actually meeting your African tax using loan funds. Because what typically happens mindset-wise with entrepreneurs that are deficient on this very contextual soft skill is that in their failure to differentiate the fact that loan funds are funds they have access to but are not yet in possession of as theirs, they will use those kinds of funds to meet all manner of the African tax, and in the end cause business failure, as was evidenced as part of my analysis. The second one, which is also was very prominent, is the soft skill of many entrepreneurs who I describe as bearing a syndrome I call the founder, owner, manager syndrome, where the founder of the business owns it 100% and runs the show in managing the business by themselves without any accountability to anyone else. Those kinds of entrepreneurs, who are by far the majority in the country and in the region and on the continent, really, those entrepreneurs are CEOs or leaders of their businesses by right and not necessarily by competence. And when the businesses are still very small and young, that leadership by right is a convenient and natural position to be in, but begins becoming a challenge when the businesses begin to grow to a level where they outgrow the competence abilities of their founders. And so two things happen there. Either the business itself begins failing because of the incompetence of its leader, or the leader deliberately stunts the business growth so that it can remain within his abilities. So that, if he's a dwarf, he ensures that dwarf in quotes in terms of competence, exposure, and abilities, he ensures that the business also remains a dwarf so that the dwarf entrepreneur remains in equilibrium with the dwarf business. And both of which, of course, would result into a negative position, and becomes worse if the business has taken on external debt meant to grow the business on all manner of metrics I mentioned before. And because of the founder's inability to transition from being a leader by right to being a leader by competence, causes business failure in itself. The third example I want to give about a very contextual soft skill that is causing business failure in many respects is the aspect of founder owner managers having very small dreams. Some of this is driven by levels of exposure, where some entrepreneurs have been come from a background where they are not privileged to have an exposure to big things, or very successful mentors and examples. And therefore, their idea of success is very limited to very small things in relative terms. And so this in itself is causing business failure in the sense that in the extreme senses where businesses begin to grow beyond the dream expectations of their founders, it gets worse. In the worst case scenarios I have personally experienced is where these businesses are able to attract external financing from impact investors. And what in industry terms is considered a relatively small loan of, say, $200,000 or $300,000 that is invested in a business where the founder owner manager is one whose dream is a small one. This loan that is meant to be a seed to be planted, to grow the business 3, 5, 10-fold. To the entrepreneur, he sees it as the end product itself. He sees it because his dream is very small. He sees a seed of $100K USD as the actual harvest for him, because his dream was at 100K. He has arrived. I personally call it a syndrome of premature arrivalism, and it's all about relative sizes of dreams in nature. A fourth soft skill that's very contextual also in this part of the world is one where there is a challenge in regards to appreciation and practice of innovation and creativity in matters business. It is common knowledge for anyone that has cared to be observant that there is very wide business copycatting in the country, where if anyone opens up, a certain type of business, before you know it, the same kind of business mushrooms, around where the first one was established, and it remains so for a very, very long time. And there is no appreciation and practice of matters, innovation and creativity. People keep on doing the same thing over and over again, with nothing changing, no attempt to make things better. In how do I deliver this product more efficiently? How do I deliver it cheaply? How do I do it differently, improve the quality? There is very, very little appreciation for those kinds of things. And that in itself has been a very big cause of business failure, no matter what 4 levels of intervention I talked about exist. And the last one I also want to address is the aspect of what I call being an armchair business leader or manager, where the appreciation of founder owner managers getting involved on the factory floor, so to speak, is highly unappreciated. And it becomes worse when success begins coming in, and the entrepreneurs get more and more detached from the base of the business. It becomes even a lot more complicated when that success leads into an inability to manage the success in itself, leading into a challenge of the successful entrepreneurs failing to manage the wealth, the fame, and the power, and the celebrity status that comes with being successful, spending so much time in the media and worrying about their personal image and profile, and forgetting to give sufficient attention to the business substance that made them successful in the first place. And so in matters soft skills, that's where I want to end on that summary. I want to quickly delve into the values segment of this presentation. And I'm going to address about 4 or 5 values that I have found as the most important and the most prevalent in determining the failure or success of the business as per my analysis. And by far the biggest one is the value of integrity. Integrity is in very short supply in the business sector as practiced in this country, so much so that most business people, especially more of the old school ones who have done nothing but business in their career, there is in fact a very worrying trend and belief that it is not possible to do business without cutting corners. Cutting corners meaning without cheating your customers, without cheating your suppliers, without cooking the books, and that any attempt to do anything like that is trying to bring too much English, as it is called, into matters that are not deserving of that kind of practice. It is commonly said that character and integrity in and of themselves cannot achieve much, but in leadership, management, and business, their absence faults everything. And this is something I have witnessed in my impact investment experience, that those that I mentioned were highly successful, scored very highly on the metric of integrity, where things were done in a transparent manner. The products they sold by quantity and quality were exact as professed by the business. Financial obligations were honored. And that gives off very long-term returns that are able to sustain the business and make it resilient, as compared to those that decided to cut corners where short-term gains were made, but it was at the expense of long-term gains, and in many of the cases, the businesses completely collapsed. The second key value I found important in those that succeeded was the value of resilience, which simply meant hanging in there, especially when times were hard, business-wise, being able to learn from difficult times to make things better, and always remaining optimistic about the future. The third value was the value of foresight, which also is in very, very short supply in the business sector, as practiced in this country. And this is about planning long-term and avoiding short-term gains at the expense of long-term ones. The fourth value is the value of prudence. which is really, in summary, about ensuring maximum value for money with no room for extravagance or wastage of resources in all aspects of how the business is operated. And the fifth, and also very important value, is the value of humility, which is most important, especially when the business begins getting into the phase of success, which is ensuring the entrepreneurs remain grounded, because as is always said, it is very, very difficult to achieve success, but a lot more difficult to maintain it. And humility is about keeping focused on what's important and avoiding the proverbial pride before the fall. I also like to add in a segment about what my thoughts were as to why the situation is the way it is in our business sector. The way it is, meaning that why are soft skills and values very deficient in our business practice, even when the argument can be made that they're extremely important. And my reflections and introspections have shown that if you look at how business has been practiced over the years in this country, little focus has been put on soft skills and values, because a lot of the effort has been on trying to solve the access to finance challenge. And a belief, unfortunately, has developed that for any business to succeed, if you are able to access financing, then the rest will automatically sort itself out. And so that has meant that soft skills and values have never been appreciated. Not much thought have gone into them, because we have thought other things are a lot more important than worrying about soft skills and values. It's also been my observation that the growth of business and entrepreneurship capacity to manage those businesses does not grow over a smooth gradient. It's a step-like growth. It grows in phases, almost like I would like to use the analogy of the education system, that you say, for example, you have nursery school, primary school, secondary, university, and that when a child is going through nursery school, and you have your baby class, middle class, and top class, when you get to top class in nursery, you're a senior student in nursery school matters. And when you graduate into the primary section of the formal education system, and you go to primary 1, you become a novice or a junior in the primary education system, and that you need then to graduate, through the ranks and get to primary 7, where you become a senior in primary matters. And when you cross to senior 1, you become a junior in secondary school matters. And so the entrepreneurship growth also is in those kinds of phases, where even when you are a senior over the last 5 years, in your 6th year, because of the new emerging matters and the size of your business compared to the abilities as an entrepreneur that you have, you could then become a junior in year 6 of your entrepreneurship journey, because your business has now moved into a new phase of the business, even when you are a senior in year 5 of your business journey. And what that means is that you therefore have two choices. Either you take personal initiative and keep on upgrading your soft skills and values through personal initiative and schooling yourself in those matters, or if you're more lucky and you have external stakeholders like impact investment funds, that have a provision of coaching and mentoring in soft skills and values. You have that as part of the interventions that are being put into the business, so that you can be coached and mentored on soft skills and values in your entrepreneurship journey, so that you can keep on upgrading yourself and skilling yourself in that respect. And I would like to also end by talking about a few of the solutions I personally have thought about and have practiced in my consulting work as I wrap up this discussion.
If you can summarize in the next 2
yes,
minutes.
Even less. I will. I'm just on my last 2 minutes. Just a few areas. One, I have made the argument that soft skills and values, from what I've observed in my analysis, they need to be taken on as the foundation upon which any other fundamental intervention in business matters is built on. Just to give an example, no amount of financing, however affordable it is, however well structured its repayment is going to be of any value to the business if the soft skills and values of the entrepreneur and the entity's top management are not positive, or are not in the right setting, because with the wrong soft skills and values, or in the absence of good soft skills and values, any financing of whatever kind of nature, size, structure, quality will never be of any good if the soft skills and values are not there or are not right. Portfolio quality and sustainability of funders would be improved or enhanced if soft skills and values coaching and mentoring was added onto their menu of service. Thirdly, the ability to maintain a healthy equilibrium between entrepreneurship capacity and business performance would only be achieved if the entrepreneurs always access soft skills and values mentoring and coaching. And if all these 3 or 4 things are done, we would ultimately, as an SME ecosystem, be able to have greater financial health and sustenance of the entire ecosystem much better than it currently is. So yes, that is the summary of my presentation today. And I would like to stop here and request for any comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karohanga Joshua. I think Dr. Edith has got a bit of a technical issue, but I will take over. Thank you very much for the presentation this morning. I am going to be the one taking us through the question and answer part of today's session. Let me just tell members that feel free to ask your question or put a comment through. You can put it in the chat, or you can type it in the Q&A part of Zoom, or alternatively, you can raise your electronic hand and you'll be given permission to unmute and speak and ask your question. So members, you can feel free to unmute, to raise your electronic hand, type your question in the chat, and you'll be given permission to unmute and ask your question. Okay, thank you very much. I see the first question from Peter Ivembe in the chat, or the first comment there. He says, I agree with your summary, absolutely. The issue is implementation and sustainability. Workers sometimes are lazy, disrespectful, and detached. How to energize them is the challenge. So it may not be phrased as a question directly, but you could answer how to energize them. Yes, Mr. Tugume, I don't know if you could respond to that.
Yes, thank you. I thought we load all the questions at once and then I take them at once, given what the time is looking like.
Or we could do that, but they may trickle in in phases. That is the issue.
Yeah. Let me then, okay, in that case, let me make a submission quickly. One of the things I also want to add as I answer this question is that I and my consulting firm has moved beyond the theory of simply talking about this analysis and why we think this is important. We actually have put into the practice of how to deal with this, and we have several entities we've worked with, SNV, PSFU, 4 other impact investment funds out of Europe that we are working with to build their soft skills and values among their borrowers. And the aspect of energizing workers who are lazy and detached has been a key theme we're trying to address. And how we are doing this is that in many of the cases we have found is that there has been a challenge in how many entrepreneurs have set up on working with their workers, where many workers have been employed in a manner where no appreciation or connection has been made between their tasks and the overall dream and objective of the business, and how the business success actually translates into employee success. And so when we talk about soft skills and values that we have been championing out there, a lot of our trainings, in addition to focusing on the entrepreneur themselves, we are also focusing on how we train the entrepreneur to sell their dream and also involve the employees so that they graduate from just seeing tasks that have no reference to the business success, and get to a point where they are actually involved in the history of the business, in the current operations of the business, and in a manner in how those operations are actually influencing the direction and the end destination of the business. But in summary, that's what it is. And the moment you begin having your employees a part of the dream of the business, then the level of their detachment and laziness and lack of being proactive and taking initiative significantly changes.
Thank you very much. Now the questions are coming, so I'm going to read all of them and then you can answer all of them at once.
Yeah.
So there's also appreciations in the chat, but the next question is from Joash. He says, thank you so much for the great presentation. And he asks, what is your take on high-performing staff, but with low integrity? And I can see also in the Q&A, someone has asked a similar question. This is Dan. He has asked, how can one manage the challenge of integrity with workers? Let me continue to ask you more questions, more appreciations. Then Bukira says, thank you, Richard, for the presentation. Would you say that some of the soft skills like foresight can be learned, or is it better to look for them from people that have them? For example, like consultants. Then the last question I'm going to give you is coming from Mr. Moses Minor. He says, quite insightful lessons. And he says the nexus between single man business, competence, and integrity where businesses never seem to grow is evident, even in religious organizations. Some do not grow because the dream and the vision of the driver is too limited. Sorry, that is just a comment. So in essence, I've asked 2 questions. 2 people have asked the same thing to do with integrity. Then also Mr. Mukira, who is asking about if foresight is learned or you get it from some other people like consultants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me answer the first 2 ones. The first 2 questions about integrity. The first, I'll say that in the choice of an employee, it is commonly said that for you to make a good choice of an employee, you are better placed to have one that espouses three things. The first one is integrity. The second one is competence. And the third one is hard work. Now it is said that if you must have a deficiency on any of them, you can only afford a deficiency on competence and hard work, but you can never afford to have a deficiency on integrity. It's also said that in that deficiency of integrity, you also are best advised to never, ever get yourself into a position where you are compromising integrity at the highest expense of very high competence and extremely high levels of hard work. Because the worst employee you'd want to have is one who is very highly competent, very hardworking, but is using those two things at the level of the lowest integrity, because you will have no business in the next few days. And like I'd said earlier in my presentation about integrity, I also, in my soft skills and values classes, I personally use an analogy that integrity is like salt in matters food and nutrition, where salt in and of itself cannot be consumed. And in fact, if you dare to consume it alone, if you are hungry, it would even hasten your death due to dehydration. But any food that has been cooked and served without salt would have no delicious taste. So on matters of integrity, I know it is in very short supply in this country, and especially in matters business, but it is one of the values that can and should never be compromised on, because without it, nothing else would function. In regards to as to whether some soft skills like foresight can be learned, they can be learned. I can speak to that experience, because I'll tell you that in some of these values, the level of espousing these values for most people is really determined by the kind of background they come from, what they've been exposed to. And so our business sector, because for a very long time, it was left to what society deemed as the failures. Failures meaning that on the onset of formal education, those who were lucky to get a formal education, went into what you call the corporate jobs, white-collar jobs. Those that didn't were left with only two options, either agriculture or business. And so business developed from a point where, the appreciation of matters professionalism, good values, ethics were never prevalent. And so the compromise on foresight came from this notion that, if gains must be made, they must be very short-term gains. You've heard of slangs in indigenous business speak, like Pagwirawo, if I have done my task, I need to be paid now. I can't wait for tomorrow, next week, or a month. And so, over time, with coaching and mentoring that is well targeted and frequent enough, you are able to move the needle on values like foresight, where you begin making the business case in that sense of how, having a long-term perspective to things may be slow and painful in the beginning, but the gains that you get are much bigger over the long term and much more sustainable. I can speak to that. It may not be easy to do, but it is the right thing to do, and it actually is possible to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that is it with Q&A. Maybe there's just one last comment. It's not a question. It comes from Alhaji Rashid. Chigo, who says, thanks so much, dear MUBS and Richard, for the rich and insightful presentation. It will indeed help to up our struggling businesses. I've seen another one coming, but because of time, I want to close Q&A and hand it back to the host this morning, Dr. Edith Basaliwa. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Josh, for taking over. My network had a challenge, but thank you for progressing. I would like to add my voice to appreciate Mr. Richard Tugume Tulyahikayo. Thank you very much for finding time in your business schedule to come and talk to us. I was attracted by your analogy where you started with the poem. The poem analogy was so good because it exposed us to what you touched on in your experience. Thank you. You've been able to take us through the soft skills and you've taken us through the values. We appreciate you. And I would like to thank you also for responding to the questions that have been raised and the comments raised. We appreciate you so much. Thank you very much. We've got to the top of the hour. I don't want to take a lot of time now, but I would like to invite the principal, if he's still on. Principal, kindly unmute and make your closing remarks to this session. Professor Moses Mwezi, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Batalelwa. Good morning, dear participants. I just want to appreciate Mr. Richard Tugume for very, very insightful presentation. We benefited from your knowledge and from your experience. And of course, this topic of using values and soft skills to build a resilient business is very crucial and very relevant to the entrepreneurs that are listening. I believe you have picked low-hanging mangoes to improve businesses. We all noted that even when you are an owner of a business and a boss of yourself, you need to try and develop skills, soft skills that will enable you to work with others. Because you are not working alone, you must handle many stakeholders, as Mr. Tugume has told us. So entrepreneurs should overcome the tendency to celebrate before their optimum level. It is important to reach that optimum level of investment and business, accumulate more wealth, so that this wealth goes to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to the future generations of your family. So we should not we learn from today that we don't have early celebrations. We keep working and use soft skills and values to advance the business in our country. Thank you so much. Thank you for visiting MUBS, all of you who are online. May God bless you today.
Thank you very much, dear Principal, Professor Moses Mwezi, for the great closing remarks. We appreciate you. Thank you for finding time in your busy schedule to come and always participate and attend in the presentations. We appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me again to add my voice to appreciate Mr. Richard Tugume Tulyahikayo for his presentation, which has given us a lot of exposure on how we are going to come up with our resilient businesses. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. And we appreciate everybody who has logged on this morning. Thank you for always starting your day with us as MUBS. We thank you for finding time to start with us. We'd like to invite you again next Thursday, same time. I wish you a blessed Thursday and bye-bye for now.
You gotta get up and make a move, 'cause the world will never see you until you do. No, they don't really care what you're going through, so you gotta show them, baby. You gotta show them the real you. You gotta give them what you got. No, don't let them see what you're not, 'cause you are strong. everybody's got their own damn problem. So everybody's trying to find their way, and day by day is a struggle. In this world, you know you have to hustle. Just know that you're not alone. You don't always have to be strong all by yourself. I said it's okay to ask for help. Now listen, people will find you, but they don't define you. And you will find people who help redesign you. People will find you, but they don't define you. And you will find people who help redesign you. You are a work of art. Bet you didn't think you'd come this far. Now here you are. Baby, you are strong. You are wise. You are worth beyond 1,000 reasons why. And you can be perfect, baby, 'cause nobody's perfect, darling. But no, there's nobody in the world like you.